On the morning of March the 4th, 1942, Mrs. Georgina Porter, a 57-year-old widow, left her half-sister's home at Willis Street, Hampton, a beachside suburb of Melbourne. Georgina's home was also in Hampton, but at 7 Thomas Street. She was in an elated mood, for she was to be married that day. Georgina, also known as Minnie, was one of 6 children of George and Mary Truscott. She was born in Victoria in 1884. Her father died in 1886, and her mother remarried a widower named William Moffat. This union produced 3 more children, 2 boys, and Gertrude, her half-sister, who was 12 years younger than Georgina. Georgina, who was of medium build, stood 5'1", and was wearing a mustard-coloured coat over a blue and white silk dress. Her curly dark hair, which was turning grey, was covered with a shiny navy straw hat. She wore horn-rimmed glasses with gold sides. Fawn stockings and black shoes completed her outfit. She had blue eyes, and her complexion was described as fresh. Like many of her contemporaries, she wore false teeth. In her possession were several suitcases. The luggage contained her trousseau, with £100 worth of new clothes, for she intended to marry a man named George Benton, and the happy couple then planned to go to live in Adelaide, South Australia. The pair were to rendezvous at Flinders Street Railway Station that day. She travelled into Melbourne with her brother-in-law, Joseph Doran, and when they arrived she deposited her luggage in the cloakroom at approximately 8:30 a.m. She was supposed to meet Benton, but he had not arrived. Her brother-in-law left her to wait while he had to go to work at 9 a.m. After that, her movements are a mystery. Her sister, her brother-in-law and niece went to Spencer Street Station to see off the Adelaide Express that evening and farewell the couple, but neither of them were present. It was also discovered that there was no booking for them either. The next morning, George Benton phoned Georgina's sister to tell her that they had delayed their trip by 1 day. "I suppose you were wondering why we weren't on the express. Well, it was too hot to travel. We're up at Warburton now. We're catching tonight's train," he said. He mentioned nothing about whether the marriage had taken place. It was the last time the family ever heard from him. Again they went to see the express off, and once more the couple did not make an appearance. The family reported her missing, and police issued a request for anyone who knew of Georgina's whereabouts to contact them urgently on the 16th of March. Her description was provided to police forces across Australia in an effort to trace her. Publicly, at least, that was where the matter stopped, as nothing was heard about the missing woman. It was, however, discovered that the marriage, which was supposed to have taken place at the registrar's office, had not taken place, but also, on a more sinister note, no notice for the marriage had ever been given. In the circumstances, police were keen to question the would-be groom, George Benton. He had told Georgina's family that he was a munitions inspector who lived at Albert Park. Benton, if that was his name, was estimated to be between 53 and 60 years of age, 5'8" and of medium build, with dark hair which was greying and receding at the temples, making him slightly bald. He was clean-shaven with a medium complexion and had false upper teeth. The man usually dressed well in a grey suit, with a high-crowned grey hat and black shoes. Police inquiries failed to locate George Benton. 4 months later, at 4 p.m. on the 4th of July, 1942, the torso of an unknown woman washed ashore on the beach, oddly enough, at Hampton. The head, arms and legs below the knees were missing and presumed to have been eaten by marine life. There were no signs of violence on the torso indicating how the woman had died. Initially it was reported the torso was naked, but later it was said that it was clad at first in a blue dress with a pink and white floral pattern, which was lost in the water. The torso was estimated to have been in the water more than a fortnight, and possibly much longer, so speculation ensued that the mysterious disappearance of Georgina Porter had been solved. Her family saw the gruesome remains, but were unable to identify those remains as being of Georgina. There was a scar left from a surgical operation, noted by the pathologist. Georgina had undergone such an operation 30 years earlier. The torso was from a woman who had never been pregnant. The operation Georgina underwent meant it was impossible for her to have had children. Eventually, though, the torso was buried as unidentified. Clothing found on the beach nearby was not able to be identified, as it had washed away again while police recovered the body, although a hat found was definitely not hers. In August 1943, there was a flurry of publicity about the case, as detectives renewed efforts to locate the missing woman. It was revealed that Georgina had begun taking money from her bank account in lots of £20 and £50, totalling £210, between October 1941 and February 1942. On the 24th of February, she closed her account and received a bank cheque for £204. This cheque was never presented for payment. Georgina was known to have had at least £100 and the bank cheque for £204 on her when she left Hampton on that fateful day. Georgina owned 2 houses valued at £2,025, on which she collected rent. In her absence, this was collected on her behalf by her brother and sister, and banked in a trust account. Nearly £500 was collected by March 1945. The suitcases were never collected from the railway station, and were sold in a lost property auction. She had also left some suitcases in a garage in Smith Street, Hampton, which were never reclaimed. Her family said she was on friendly terms with all of them, and there was no reason she would not have been in touch with them, if she were able to. On the 13th of August 1943, it was reported that police believed Georgina was dead. They believed she was stood up at the railway station and had returned to Hampton, and in the depths of sadness threw herself into Port Phillip Bay and drowned, the torso located in July being her mortal remains. Her sister recalled that Georgina was infatuated with Benton, telling her, "Don't worry, I'm happier than I've ever thought I'd be." The two had met in 1940, about 18 months before the disappearance. Georgina's first husband, Henry Edward Porter, had died at a private hospital on the 27th of August 1937. She was so besotted that she would end friendships with anyone who didn't like George. They had planned to marry half a dozen times, but something always prevented it. The family did not particularly like Benton, who was always mysterious. He spoke big about himself, such as possessing a car and a chauffeur, but they never saw either. Although he said he worked for the Department of Defence, he also owned a farm at Burnham in South Australia. There was, in fact, nowhere in South Australia called Burnham. Georgina's sister said that she had only seen him 4 or 5 times, and then only for a few minutes at a time. He avoided mingling with the family, she said, and she had always been suspicious of him. Despite the search in 1943, no definite proof of the whereabouts or fate of Georgina Porter was firmly established. On the 1st of March 1945, Georgina was presumed dead, and her estate ordered it to be distributed to her nieces and nephews. The mysteries surrounding the disappearance were never resolved. If the body found in the sea was that of Georgina, how did it come to be there? If it was not, then what happened to her? Was she murdered or not? Who was George Benton, and what became of him, who likewise vanished without trace? Was he robbing Georgina, as seems likely, and ended by murdering her? Or were they both the victims of an unknown party? After more than 80 years, the answers seem destined to remain hidden forever in the dark corners of history.